Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the podcast today, we have Andy Cabasso. Welcome, Andy.
Hey, Thomas, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Would you like to start by telling the audience a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure, happy to. So I have a digital marketing background. Years ago, I started and grew and then eventually sold a digital marketing agency. And today I run a service called Postaga, which is a tool that helps you do email outreach to help you build your web presence, increase your visibility online, boost your rankings, and also do digital PR to connect with other potential partners. Yeah, that's where I'm at today.
Well, I'd certainly like to speak to you a bit more about that. But one of the things when we were messaging, one of the things that
Yeah.
you spoke about was your knowledge about the concept of virtual summits. I've
Mhm.
not seen this talked about that much in relation to marketing strategy. So that's one thing that I really wanted to talk to you about today. If someone's unaware of the concept of a virtual summit, can you just summarize it?
Absolutely. So a virtual summit is basically like uh, a really kind of like a substitute for an in-person conference, or really to make it simple, it's an all-day webinar or multiple day webinar, basically, where you have multiple sessions on different topics, usually around one general theme or industry focus. So they're like you would see at like a conference. It would be like here's a digital marketing conference or a consumer electronics conference or something like that. A virtual summit is focused for a particular industry or market and has different sessions with different speakers and on different topics related to that. So that's kind of generally what a virtual summit is. At its simplest, it can be a few different sessions with different speakers over the course of a day. On the more complex side of things, it could be a multi-day affair with different tracks, just like you'd have at if you were at like an in-person conference with many sessions going at the same time on different topics, with room for audience involvement. Some of them, more elaborate ones, have like breakout rooms where you can go and talk with other attendees and have interactions with other attendees and vendors and things like that. There's a wide range of what you can do with a virtual summit. But at its simplest, also, it doesn't have to be over the top.
Mm. Essentially, it's like a seminar, but you're not
Mhm.
going there. It's all over the computer, essentially.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And I mean, I can see why that would be beneficial based on everyone being locked down at the moment.
Mhm.
Um, Presumably, from a business perspective, you're looking to turn some of those attendees into clients. Um,
Yes. Yeah. So I guess there are a few different benefits of what you could do with a virtual summit. Uh, you could have a virtual summit because you want to get paying customers out of it, and that works if you are presenting on a session or a few sessions. But also, you're going to want to have a variety of content to bring in people and attendees that are not just there for you, because you could have a webinar where you are presenting on a topic, where it's just you presenting on your topic, and that can be it. So why do a virtual summit? Well, a virtual summit can get you a wider audience because you have different speakers on different topics. Not all of them are going to be directly related to whatever it is your business sells. There are going to be other speakers there, hopefully, with interesting topics and discussions that are related to their areas of expertise. Uh, and it'll get you a lot wider variety of people who may not be familiar with you or heard of you before. But there are aside from like the direct benefit of getting people into your ecosystem, that to get on your mailing list or to potentially pay you money to attend your conference, there are other benefits as well that you may not be like thinking about doing a virtual summit. A big one for me, and why I've done virtual summits in the past, is for building partnerships with the other speakers. So having this virtual summit gets uh, is like the single event opportunity for you to promote to your audience, for you to promote to a wider audience if you want to do paid search advertising or digital display advertising or anything like that. It's also an opportunity for you to find other speakers who want to reach and connect with this audience. And what I'd done in the past, I ran several years of virtual summits, and it was a good opportunity for me as a smaller business, a smaller agency in this industry that we were targeting, to invite people from larger companies and who we wanted to eventually be partners with us, to get them, like, to give them access to this audience of our virtual summit and say, hey, would you be interested in speaking on this topic? You can do it from the comfort of your own home, and you can reach 1,000 people with giving a talk that you've given a dozen times before. Would you be interested in doing that? And uh, I think everyone except for like a handful of people who just had scheduling conflicts, who were traveling or unable to do it, everyone that we reached out to was on board and eager to participate in it. So it was good for us as an agency to build partnerships with other companies. It was yeah, a really good opportunity for us there.
Can you give us like a case study on your virtual summit? So,
Sure.
because you gave us an example of approaching people, but
Mhm.
what were should we say the process of setting it up, and then also the kind of results that you saw from that?
Sure. So, in terms of the process of how to set it up, there are a lot of different ways that you could do a virtual summit. You could be either completely live, or all the content is pre-recorded, um, a- and it could be one day, it could be many days, and really, kind of the first thing that I had to do was figure out what content do I want to have at this. And so figuring out once I have an idea of what I want for content, finding the speakers, and then getting a date, and then reaching out to the speakers and ask them to be involved. Then there's also one benefit now is, in the year 2021, there are many different platforms out there for doing virtual summits. If you want to use a platform that's ready to go, services like Hey Summit or On24 or Hopin. These are platforms that really were not popular several years ago when I was doing virtual summits, and I wish they did exist, because it's a lot easier to organize and manage, whether you're doing pre-recorded content with your speakers ahead of time or whether it's all live. So one thing I would say is there are certain challenges doing having it with live content as opposed to pre-recorded, which is, if it's live, you need to make sure that all of your speakers are ready to go. There are no technical issues, and these things happen regularly with webinars. And it's why, like, if you do webinars, you want to be sure to have you and your speaker test out the recording equipment, the sound, and make sure that they're in a place with good internet connection, everything like that. Make sure they can share their slides and know how to use the software. But if you have many sessions going either simultaneously or many sessions over the course of a day, you have to be able to test and manage all of that. And so that can be a challenge if you are doing all live sessions, provided you like if you need the team behind that. So when I put these sessions on, it was just me doing all of it, which was a lot. And so one way that I was able to make it work was by basically going into a Zoom with each speaker, recording their session, or they would send their session to me over email or Dropbox, and I would upload it to the platform, and they would have their designated session live, quote unquote, at the given time of their session. But that's one thing that enabled me to be able to do this, was having it pre-recorded as opposed to having it live. It would have been a nightmare. I just thinking of all the things that probably would have went wrong if I were to do it that way.
I was
That
going to say the pessimist in me thinks that if you've got something live and you've got multiple speakers, it's just bound to be an instance of someone,
right.
crackling up, right?
And there's always something. It's just seems like it's inevitable. There's always something that will go wrong if it's a live event. If you haven't been able to test things out ahead of time. A lot of the popular platforms now have like this backstage area that you can go, and so you can have your speakers test out their equipment, make sure they sound good, make sure they can share their slides if they have to, and really help them to understand how the platform works because they're all different and someone may want to see like, all right, well, how do I call on people for Q&A? How do I see what comments I'm getting? Just getting familiar with the software. And so uh, if you're going to do it live, having an app that has like the backstage area is a nice thing to have. So that's one thing for speakers. Also, kind of important is to make the event as successful as possible. You don't want to just have all of the burden of promotion being on you as the host. Hopefully you're having some speakers be involved because they have access to a larger audience or a different audience from you as well. So you're going to want them to promote the event too.
Mm.
So having pre-made collateral ready for them to go and use makes things a lot easier. So if you like draft up a doc that has tweets that they can use with their special sign up links or social media cards or even pre-written email templates, that makes their job easier, that is helpful as well. And so for each speaker, I made sure to like have an email template that they could use that was tailored to their particular content. I would create social media cards for each of the speakers, and all that took more time. But I found, and like in the first year that I did this, I did not have as much collateral specific with the speakers, and they didn't do nearly as much promotion as I was hoping they would. But just because it makes sense. Like I'm invited to speak at a conference. They're asking me to promote it and share it, and maybe I'll send out a tweet or something. But if I have to come up with the content for it and think about it, it's going to take me time. And we're all very busy, but
Mm.
having content that they can use absolutely makes things just so much easier. So I could just copy paste and schedule it, and that's basically it.
So was it worth it for you doing all that work that you did in the summit? Was it the end result that you got? Was it worthwhile?
Yes. So there are tangible and intangible benefits to it. The tangible benefits being, um, like we got some new customers out of that. Great. Uh, did those customers pay for the time that like the amount of time that I spent putting the summit together on its own? No, it did not. But there were really several benefits that we got from it. One, there obviously there's the clients that we get. Two, there is the brand equity, that the intangible, the brand equity that we built, that kind of increased our profile by way of the summit. So from doing the summit, us hosting the summit with larger company names than us, that were participants, it definitely made us stand out in the industry. It got us uh, a lot of publicity, a lot of notoriety, and it kind of improved our brand's esteem in the eyes of a lot of our existing customers, prospective customers. People had, just through conferences I had been to since and conversations I'd been having with prospective customers, a lot of people had heard about or had been to the summit, and it had definitely done a lot to really build our brand's reputation in our industry. And aside from like that, with customers, with partners as well, we built a lot of great partnerships from this. So having these guest speakers, uh, there was probably this sense of reciprocity that, we invited them and they got access to this large audience, and we were able to take part in the summit, which was pretty easy for them to do since they were able to use content from an event or a speech they'd given before. It was easy for them. They wanted to help us out as well, and so we were able to do other partnership initiatives from that. And so, but yeah, there were kind of different benefits that we got from doing the summit. It, not being said, it was a lot of work. It was absolutely a lot of work, but it was, there were at the time that we had started doing this, there weren't really other people in the space doing it, and so it definitely helped us stand out for sure.
Good. Well, the couple of things that it makes me think of is how you obviously get people to go to your summit or your seminar. So you need enough people to actually turn up. How did you go about doing that?
Yeah, so a few different channels. So one channel was our existing email list, which we had. Other channels were through our speakers, so getting publicity through the speakers to their networks. That being said, from my experience with the summit, as well as other events that I'd been involved with, where I've been trying to get other partners to promote, I would not bank on that. um, just because everyone's busy, everyone's promoting their own things, and from the numbers that we saw, like we got a little bit of promotion from our speakers, but not what we would have hoped for in a best case scenario.
They want to turn up and speak, basically.
Yeah, so like some people absolutely did. Some of our speakers did like zero promotion and didn't send out a tweet or didn't share it with their email list or anything like that. Some people absolutely did, and it varied from speaker to speaker. But it did drive some engagement, drive and during the seminars as well, they did engage in social media, which kind of kept like we would see random influxes of new signups because they had started conversations in their channels, which was definitely helpful. What else? Oh, other channels. We definitely did paid social channels, so like paid Facebook, Google Display, and channels like that. And that was, I would say, I think paid Facebook was probably our least expensive channel in terms of driving signups. LinkedIn wasn't great at all, and Google Display was okay.
All right. And are you happy with the numbers that you got to go to your summit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think the first year we had around 400 to 500, then 700 the next year, and then close to 1,000 the third year. Okay. So I was overall was very happy with it. If I was starting over, looking at different marketing opportunities today, I would probably check it out. In particular, if I'm in a space where I'm looking to build my brand, I have the resources available and the time available to dedicate to this, and I could see myself like, all right, I could see reaching out to different speakers, getting on their radar, and seeing if they'd be interested in participating, as well as me having the resources to put into promoting this. One other channel I would say that was also good was press outreach. So reaching out to blogs in our niche, in our industry, to kind of share it and promote it that way, since it was not done in our space previously. It stood out and it got some press coverage as well.
Well, if you think about 400 or 500 to 1,000 people in an actual room, that's an awfully big audience, isn't it? For a seminar, I mean.
Yeah, it was. I would think that like if we were to try and do something in person, there was no way we can get that many people. But by virtue of it being online, we were able to get top-notch speakers that we didn't have to fly from around the world, and attendees who could drop in for sessions that they were interested in, and also at the end or just in between go about their day and not have to spend 2 days traveling to and from the seminar and then lose all that work that they've been putting off because they're at the seminar.
Mm. And what, I know you said that a couple of people couldn't do it, but what was the reception like when you reached out to speakers? Was it generally quite positive?
Yeah, I didn't get really any negative feedback. I think I reached out. I kind of reached out to a variety of speakers. I had uh, a a few speakers who were asking for an honorarium, which we couldn't provide. Basically, they wanted a speaker fee, and we were very, very low budget. As I mentioned, I was the person on the team putting it together, and so I wasn't able to do that, and so the person didn't end up speaking. But aside from that, all the speakers were very, very enthusiastic because the pitch was simply, you can give a speech that you've given before, you give a talk that you've given before, use your same slides, it's fine. Well, maybe model your slides for our presentation, don't have another seminar's branding on it, but
Mm.
yeah, you can give a talk that you're comfortable with, you'll be able to share your expertise with 1,000 people, and you could do it from the comfort of your own home. It'll take an hour of your time, and just answer some questions and share it on social media and maybe with your email list. And the reception was pretty positive, and overall was kind of really pleased with the response that I got from speakers. um,
Are you slowly
I
talking
know that,
yourself
like,
into
maybe if
doing
you're
another
if you
one
were
now?
completely unfamiliar with what.
I said, are you slowly talking yourself into doing another one?
I'm thinking about it now. Like, yeah, it was overall, yeah, overall it was real good.
Good. Well, of course,
Mhm.
the questions come
Yeah,
from the perspective of potentially someone else wanting to do the same thing. Have you thought about,
yeah.
or what do you think about the potential limitations of certain businesses doing summits versus others? And I suppose another way of asking the question
Mhm.
is, what do businesses have to have in common in order to throw a good summit?
That's a great question. So our summit was very well. It was very B2B focused. So like our niche of my agency at the time was the legal industry. So our clients were lawyers and law firms, and I had other speakers give sessions that were related to the interests of that audience of lawyers. And so even if, like, even my marketing agency was focusing on marketing for lawyers, I didn't just have sessions about marketing for lawyers, in part because if I did, either the sessions would be just by us or by us and competitors of ours, and we didn't want to really do that, obviously. So we had sessions on a variety of topics that would be interesting to that audience. And so if your business serves a particular niche, a particular customer type, then I think that's a good focal point for finding other types of content, and other speakers, and having kind of the focus of what your seminars are going to be on. So us having like this specific industry of, let's say we were lawyers, that's was very easy for us to come up with programming, because we could have other like software companies focusing on legal, or accountants that focused on legal, or other lawyers giving seminars to these lawyers on certain tips or practices or things like that that could benefit them. That was really helpful content for the audience.
Mm.
So then, coming up with the programming for what's going to be in your summit, I would think about who is your ideal customer, and what, if it's not a specific industry, but it's, let's say you serve businesses generally, are there any commonalities? Are there issues that you see that they're facing when they come to you and when they hire you, that would be relevant for them? So, like, for example, let's say that you have software for businesses, and you serve a variety of small businesses. Well, is there are there other things that interest them at the time that they are reaching out to hire you typically, or and I would kind of use that as the starting point for figuring out what other programming you might want to have.
Yeah, so I asked about the business. It's less about the business and more about the attendees and what they like.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you just, I mean, if you just focus on what you're interested in, you have great content for yourself, but not really content that's going to drive signups. The
Mm.
content that's going to drive people to sign up is content that's going to be interesting to that specific audience. So I would focus very specifically on the type of person that you want to sign up and kind of get in their head and then kind of work your way backwards and create content that way.
With your summit, was it a free version or did you ask them to pay? And what are the factors or considerations for those two models?
Sure. So it could be free or paid. Our summit was completely free. We wanted as many attendees as possible, and that was our goal from the beginning. The thing is, I guess there are pros and cons with each. By having it paid, you get money, and maybe it'll pay for itself. That's great. But a downside to that is if it is paid, then you're going to get fewer attendees, and and that's a consideration as well. But also, I think if you are having a paid summit, then your speakers are going to be more likely to expect payment as well, since you're charging people to attend, you're charging people to listen to a session by a particular speaker. That speaker is probably going to be thinking, okay, well, then maybe you should be paying me. And that might be something that you have to budget for as well. But by keeping it free, if a summit is not, if like conferences and summits are not your regular business model, I would absolutely recommend keeping it free. This way uh, you can get in touch with as many people as possible. There are some, like in the conference and trade show business, that you're going to see are doing virtual summits now in lieu of the in-person events that they had been previously doing, and they need to monetize those because that's their entire business is summits and events. And so they are going to be charging, they're going to be charging hundreds to thousands of dollars for the content, and that's their model, and I get it. But for my company, where our goal was, we want to have a summit because we want to reach as many people as possible and get more people in our ecosystem, get them on our mailing list, because the long-term benefit of having them on our mailing list is worth much more than a one-time fee that we get immediately.
Mm. And I mean, I don't know about you, but for me,
Mhm.
if I were to do a paid summit, for example, I wouldn't
Mhm.
expect to be pitched too much to. And if you do pay for it, and then the your person who's presenting doesn't get
Mm.
to do any kind of pitch, then it's kind of, not only am I doing it for free, but I'm not getting any customers either.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. With a paid summit, the real focus of the summit, like that everyone understands, is I'm paying for the content. So the content is what I'm paying for, and it better be good and unique and perfect on its own. But if the content is free, then there's more leeway, like you're saying, for a speaker to uh, pitch related their services. And so, oh, hey, yeah, if you like the content, then what you've heard today, please check out our website and all of this and stuff. But yeah, if it's paid, then you're like, I'm going into this to learn something. So don't sell me anything else.
Did you get any feedback from your speakers about how, how it went, or whether they got benefits from being a speaker?
In general, I got positive feedback from the speakers. They were yeah, it was very easy for them. And so they were appreciative of just like helping them get their session going and reach their audience. One thing I will say is that time slots do make a difference. And so like if I had a slot at the end of the day, I think I recall one speaker was not one speaker was not like happy with their turnout of attendees because their session ended up being at the end of the day, and I recognize that, and maybe the solution is for the future would have been okay. So we will maybe we should cut the schedule so that it's not going to be go so late in the day that people are going to drop off as much. So for that particular speaker, actually, we had them at a subsequent session, subsequent uh, summit where they were like the first of the day to present. So we made up for it, but they were willing to come back. So there's that.
It just made me think of you know, with seminars, I think it is that people like to leave a little bit early to like beat the traffic and everything. And it just makes me think people have taken that, you know, they're sitting at home, but they want to leave early so that they can beat the traffic and get home.
Yeah, right. It's funny. It did feel like that. Like, yeah.
If you had, let's say, I'll give you a little bit of a challenge. Let's say an architect came to you and said, I'd like to put on a virtual summit. What would you recommend that I do? What would the process be?
I have a lot of follow-up questions at first because I don't know very much about architecture. I guess a big question is this like who is the audience that they want to connect with? If it's architects, is it very B2C, like they want people to hire their architecture firm, or they want businesses to hire their architecture firm for business buildings or purposes or like that?
So I would anticipate, I don't know a great deal about architecture. I'm not sure why that popped into my head.
But
I
we're
would
here now.
anticipate it would be high-end consumers.
Gotcha. I think one good thing about summits is that the content can be reused and recycled after the fact. And so uh, after the event, you could package the content and package the you could really put it together in a course if you wanted to. And so if you had high end consumers interested in hiring architects and things like that, you could put together an online course from the sessions and pitch it to them that way, and like as this like lead magnet on your website. And so here, come take this 2-day architecture course of all the things that you need to know. In terms of like other speakers, who would I have at this seminar? Probably other industries related to architecture. So I don't know, interior design. I
So yeah, that's a good start. You get an interior design speaker, you'd reach out to that person.
Yeah,
You'd
something
have
like
yourself,
that.
obviously, if you were an architect.
Right. I'd also want to know what else are people shopping for when they are hiring an architect. So, is location important? Should we have a speaker about different cities or something like that? If that's a consideration, I'm not particularly in the space, nor do I know where I'd be in my life if I were hiring an architecture firm. But just like throwing ideas like, all right, well, so what is the person who's hiring an architecture firm? What else are they hiring for? And what other questions do they have when they are in that mindset? And so I would find speakers of like speakers from companies that are in these related services that I could have and fill out sessions. Part of a challenge of this in particular, though, is because it is B2C, you have to really find your audience. So I think like Facebook ads are going to be particularly important to try and find that audience. Hopefully you have an email list that you can leverage, and maybe there are other, actually a good example would be like publications, so Architecture Digest and things like that. You could have a speaker from the magazine or these publications who might be able to share your summit with their audience, maybe in exchange for some sponsorship opportunities as well. That might be something I'd think about checking out. But I think if you're going B2C, any other marketing materials that reach your audience would be good partners or speakers or sponsors.
And do you advocate maybe building up because I think you raised a good point, which is you need to be able to know that you can get, or at least have a good idea that you can get people to attend. Would
Mhm.
you say doing some sort of waiting list would be a good idea? Either like, would you be interested in this type of event, and then building up that list?
That would be, yeah, that'd be good if you're trying to figure out, is this something that people be interested in? Yeah, if you like build like a one-page landing page, saying like, would you like just like maybe just very generally about a virtual summit on this given topic, and you could kind of follow up and say we're putting this together, or like kind of teasers of material, but just to kind of see if this is something that people be interested in.
Mm. There's a follow-up question to that would
Yeah.
be, how long did you leave between kind of the announcement of your summit and then when it actually took place? Like how long did you give yourself for acquisition?
Yeah, I think we had about 6 weeks of lead time, like yeah, 1 month, between 1 month to like 6 weeks, and this was because I figured that having too little lead time meant that we just wouldn't be able to reach people, and other people and people's calendars would book up. So I wanted to have it at least like start announcing it at least a month away, so people could clear their calendars who would uh, be interested in attending and like getting the emails and all the notifications right away. But we also needed time to reach as many people as possible. And I thought a month to 6 weeks would be plenty of time and would be enough time for us to do all of that. Um, that being said, like we started working on it, on the ideas for the summit, probably 6 months out, just to kind of start getting ideas going. And really, I'd say like 3 to 4 months, maybe 3 months out to 4 months out, really starting to put the materials together.
It's impressive.
It was a lot of work. So yeah, if you are a one person marketing team, I just fair warning, it is a lot of work, and if you have the resources to put towards it, it's a kind of unique channel with many different benefits that you can get out of it. So it should be something to, yeah, be worth considering and thinking about. And yeah, if you have any more questions on that, if anyone listening has any questions on that, I'm happy to just share ideas or anything else I can about it.
Well, separate from the actual metrics and the results, was it
Mhm.
rewarding at the end of it all?
Yes, I remember. Well, I remember I remember it was when it was done on the Friday evening. I slept that entire weekend, and that was the best sleep I've had in my entire life. There was a lot to put together, just a lot of moving parts, and once it was done, I was really proud of what we were able to accomplish. Um, there were it's just there were you it was a really unique way to promote our business and our brand in ways that we hadn't seen our competitors do,
Mm.
and the feedback that we got was really good, and, from that, and so I was really proud of what we were able to do. And the
Well,
attendee feedback also was very good. I couldn't I really I wouldn't have thought it went well if I didn't get a lot of good feedback from our attendees. And the we had surveys go out, and was kind of polling people during the event, and the feedback that we got during it was really good.
well done on it anyway.
Yeah. Um, yeah, there were actually one thing I do want to say, that now that it's like top of mind, if whether you're a speaker or you have other people speaking, make sure that the content is very informational and educational, and not salesy, and not purely salesy, because people see right through that. It's very obvious. Like if you're having speakers really, I would send them like a document that kind of lays out what your expectations are, and Like you can have a slide or a slide or two that tells people to check out your website or your company or whatnot, but don't don't be doing a product demo for your own product as your session, because that's not of value to anyone. And then what's going to happen, and we saw this happen, especially our first year when we didn't know that we should have said this. One speaker, or maybe more than one speaker, had content that was very thinly veiled, if veiled at all, sales pitch for their product, and immediately the attendance numbers dropped drastically. It just fell off a cliff, and it didn't recover because people, like, it just left a bad taste of the attendees, and they're like, all right, well, if this is the content that I'm going to be expecting, I'm not going to come back. And so it's to everyone's benefit, the other speakers, you as the host, to make sure that your content is top notch.
People don't typically turn up and spend their time in order to get a pitch.
Yeah.
And just a last point on this: if someone did want to, let's say they're convinced or they're particularly interested in what you said and they wanted to do their own summit, what would the first few steps that you'd recommend be?
First few steps for the summit, I would first try and figure out who your audience is. Like I was mentioning before, it's important to know the person, like the ideal person that you want to be attending, so you can create content geared towards them. And so once you know, like, all right, I'm looking to connect with a wealthy consumer who would be looking to hire an architect, let's say, then you can create the schedule and the content geared towards them. And once you know what type of content you want, then you can find speakers that can talk about that topic, and people at companies that could be partners of yours, not just for their content in the summit, but in the long run, that could be good partners for you as well. And so then after that, I would kind of get other companies on board. I would figure out the date or dates that you'd be wanting to have this. So this way, when you're reaching out to speakers, you can say, our event is going to be on this date. Mark your calendars, or let's pre-record something ahead of time for then. And create like a landing page specifically for that summit, so that eventually you can get people to sign up. After I also have I should mention, I have a guide all about how to create a virtual summit that I should probably share, but kind of lays out all the steps that you need to take to do it.
If you send over the link to that, then I'll put it in the description for people.
Yeah, will do.
Have you got any, because you mentioned there were a couple of tech, a bit of help for people that you didn't have before. Do you recommend any of those companies to help with the tech side of it?
Yeah, so there are a few platforms, like we have webinar platforms like Zoom or GoToWebinar or any of them. There are platforms that are made specifically with virtual summits in mind. There are a bunch of new ones as of late, but the ones that I am more familiar with are Hey Summit, Hopin, and On24, and they're all very good. And in the summit guide that I have, I kind of share the differences between them.
Well, I do like the idea of like having a audience interaction kind of breakout room type thing. I think that's quite cool.
Yeah, a few of the platforms have that. I can't remember which ones, but yeah, that is kind of a thing that some of them have too.
Well, thank you for that information. There was a couple of things that you mentioned that you have expertise in. One of them was AppSumo, and what was the other one?
Link building or a product hunt.
Product hunt was the one that so can you just talk about that for a moment?
Product hunt and AppSumo can be great ways to get you off the ground and get you users, especially in your early days. Before we launched, we knew that we wanted Postaga to be get kind of do our big introduction via Product Hunt, because we know that they have a large user base, a large following, and we could, if we were able to promote ourselves well, and if we would be one of the top hunts of the day that we launch, we would get a ton of users early on. We'd be able to get a ton of feedback and yeah, people using our product. And so that was our goal from the beginning, and we really worked on this launch specifically with for Product Hunt with that in mind. So uh, for Product Hunt, if you're not familiar, Product Hunt is a kind of a website where every day there are new apps and products that launch, and people upvote them, and the top hunts of the day go into the next day's newsletter, and get shared with a larger audience, people who are subscribing to the newsletter. So it can be a great way to get exposure of your new app or product. Um, the there yeah so there are just for Product Hunt, like there are some like best practices that we really needed to be mindful of. So for example, it like launching at exactly or right shortly after midnight Pacific time which is when they reset the day counter, and then going as hard as we can on promotion once we're launched, because the interesting thing that we saw was that um, getting promoted highly and getting a lot of upvotes early on kind of set the tone for the day, because once you're on towards the top of their homepage, people will check you out just by virtue of you being on the homepage, and they'll check you out, they'll upvote you, they'll check out your product, and that's great. But if you are buried if towards the bottom of that page, then people just are not going to find you, and there's no momentum. But yeah, I guess momentum is the best way to describe it. Is you once you're towards the top, people will keep looking at your product and check it out. uh, Other stuff that was relevant is making sure that we had a really good, short, concise video that was like flashy, but also easy to understand what our product did. Also, having images that weren't just like a screenshot, but images that had annotations to provide context for what people are actually looking at, and also really having our marketing engine ready so that we could once the uh, it would be launched, we can reach out to our lists to get them to find us and upvote us, because that was yeah really critical to getting to our success, which we ended up being number one for the day that we launched and number two for the week. Having our audience to be able to promote us was huge.
And your product that you put on Product Hunt?
Yep, that was Postaga, which is this link building and digital PR outreach tool that we built.
Okay. And
Yeah.
tell me what do you say? What would you find is, because there's all sorts of information on link building,
Mhm.
and if you're doing it kind of day in day out, I would suppose that there are misconceptions that you hear all the time. So, what are the top misconceptions about link building that you find?
Oh, so there are, I think, just a challenge with digital marketing and SEO in general is there are a lot of people who treat it very much like a commodity. So they take an approach of SEO or link building as pay X dollars, get Y result. So like uh I'm sure that if anyone has been on the internet long enough and runs a business, you're getting cold solicited by people offering to get you links to a certain domain authority website for a certain dollar amount, and like where they're saying like, all right, I can get you a link to a domain, like a website with a domain authority of 50 out of 100 for $100 or something like that, and there's like it's a very transactional sort of thing where someone's trying to get you to pay for a link that may or may not be relevant to your business. on a website that is of dubious concern. Um, and like that's just over time, link building and also just SEO and digital marketing in general has uh, is often treated like that. But the thing is, good link building and effective link building is very much about building relationships, about reaching out to people and connecting with them, and being human is an important thing. So, uh, so for example, and like yeah, I'm sure anyone who has run a website has gotten just very cold, generic pitches of, "Hey, I wanted to reach out because you should link to my blog post," or like you've gotten that comment spam on your website, like, "Absolutely, check out my blog," or something like that, and that's just very ineffective. But the real thing that works with doing link building and outreach is uh, being very targeted in and human in your approach is the best way to say it. One challenge that we had at my agency was being able to do link building for ourselves and our clients at scale. And the reason that we wanted to do link building was because for the SEO perspective, the single biggest ranking factor that we saw from Google, the one thing that above all else helped improve rankings, was getting links to our website and to our blog posts from other relevant, reputable websites. And so, if we could have figured out a way to streamline and automate the tedious aspects of it, prospecting to find relevant websites, finding email addresses and validating email addresses and sending out personalized, relevant emails, that could have saved us a ton of time. And that was just a challenge that we had with our agency. And that's why we ended up building Postaga. And that's really what it does, is it streamlines the tedious aspects of link building, but it also takes a very human approach to it. So basically, it helps you find relevant websites that are related to your content, to your blog posts, to promote your content, and then find the right people and then reach out to them to ideally get these other websites to link to you, or maybe do some other potential partnerships, like allow you to guest post on their website, or there are a bunch of other campaign types with different opportunities there. So
One
that's
thing
kind
I
of the
wanted
approach.
to ask you about
Yeah.
is, because you sold your one with legal
Yes.
clients, but then you're doing something, I wouldn't, it's not obviously not the same, but it's
Mhm.
similar. So obviously you felt like you wanted to go back into it, or because I would think that when you get like an exit,
Mhm.
you're kind of, what's that cliche, going to sit on the beach or something. But what are your thoughts on that, about selling and then essentially doing something similar? Were you
Sure. So with the agency, which is very service oriented, it was geared towards providing the service of building websites and then doing SEO and SEM for law firms in particular. Um, the idea for the this new business, which is really more a self-service app, is kind of came from the frustration that we had with running an agency. And so our product is really geared towards other agencies. It's geared towards people like us, like where a thing that we wished that we had ourselves when we were running our agency.
mm,
Because link building can be so tedious and there's so many steps to it, we wanted to take the pain out of it, essentially. And
okay?
coming from that agency background, we had that knowledge and that understanding of agency life, and we wanted to be able to help other agencies.
So you're solving a problem for people in your new product.
Exactly.
So if someone wasn't doing link building currently,
Mhm.
whether that be a business or a agency offering that service, what would you say
Mhm.
to them about the benefits of link building?
Uh, the biggest benefit about link building is that it can have a meaningful impact on your search rankings for yourself and for your clients. Uh, Probably a bigger impact than many other SEO strategies out there, and it works in tandem with a lot of the SEO things that you see people doing. Like a very common thing that people do when they do SEO is they create content and they write blog posts, and that's all great. But if there's no one linking to your content, then it's kind of just sitting there. And the more links from other relevant, reputable websites to your content, the better your content is going to rank, and the better your website overall is going to rank. And so it should be part of any agency's SEO strategy. I recognize that it's a challenge, well, it has been a challenge in the past because of the process to do it. But thanks to our tool, thanks to Postaga, it can help streamline it and make it easier for you to run. Aside from like the link building aspect of, I want to promote this blog post because I want it to rank better and I want more links to it, there are other things that you can do with the link building outreach process to better promote your business. So like one example is, this workflow of link building outreach, generally involves, first, we're going to prospect, we're going to find relevant websites to reach out to. Then we're going to find the right person to get in touch with. And then we're going to find their email address and validate it, and then send them a personalized email. Well, that outreach process can also be very useful for forming partnerships, for finding other related businesses that you want to reach out to. If you're doing a virtual summit, to tie it back to that, it could be good for you to use this kind of process to find people to speak at your summit. It could also be good to, one thing that I've been doing lately is using outreach to find podcasts for me to be a guest on and talk about my expertise. So there are a lot of different kind of outreach campaigns that you can do with this process to promote your business.
Okay, well, I think you've made a pretty good case for link building, providing it's in tandem with relationship building, right?
Exactly.
All right, well, would you like to add anything else about the topics that you talked about today?
You know what? I think we covered it. I think we did it. We did a great job. We talked about virtual summits. We talked about link building. We talked about product hunt. I'll call this a win. I think we did it.
Well, I think you're being generous when you say we did it. I think it was you providing all the value.
It was both of us. We all did it.
There you go. So where can people find you?
So you can check out Postaga. That's postaga.com. That's my business. You can also find me online. I'm pretty easy to find. My name is Andy Cabasso. I don't think there are any other Andy Cabassos out there. So on Twitter, you could find me at Andy Cabasso. Facebook, the same. But on LinkedIn, I'm Andrew Cabasso because it's more professional.
Okay. Well, you're one-upping me because there are about 10,000 Thomas Greens out there.
Oh, that's a common name?
All right. Well, thanks for being a great guest.
Yeah. Thanks, Thomas.
And I'll speak to you soon.
All right. Sounds good.
Bye.